guess what? What? Okay, so my Uncle Ping is back from China. Like, oh really? Yeah. Okay. Since we have the history project to do, we should go ask him some questions. Yeah?
Yeah, that's probably good.
All right, let's go.
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces pass and I'm homebound.
Oh, we just got hit by a
Excuse
bus.
me, can I help you?
Oh, sorry, didn't see you there. Just kidding, I did. But I couldn't help it over here. You were talking about your Uncle Ping, and I thought it would educate you on China.
Okay.
Hop on the bus, kids. We're about to go on an adventure. Yay! As you can see, the people of China are being ruled by the Qing dynasty. The dynasty was ruled by the Manchus from 1644 to 1912.
Yeah, the Han Chinese hated the Manchurians. Did they even do any good for China? TBH, they sound like they caused more harm than actual growth.
Well, they retained the civil service system, staffed by Confucian-educated Han Chinese scholars selected by an intense exam system. That's pretty intense.
But I thought the Manchus still held about half of the highest positions in Beijing.
Exactly. Although the civil service system guaranteed well-educated workers, the Manchus still had an advantage over the Chinese. This increased the resentment of the Manchus.
That and the ugly hairstyles they forced on the people.
But they did levy lighter taxes, which was at least one positive thing about their rule. Some of the emperors were also pretty good and brought positive development to the country. But of course, everyone and everything has its flaws.
Tell us about the important emperors.
Sure, let's start out with the Kangxi Emperor.
Oh, he ruled from 1661 to 1722, and he was one of the greatest rulers in Chinese history. He personally commanded a large Chinese force that went into Mongolia, I believe.
And his troops also convinced the Russians to sign the Treaty of Nurshink in 1689, increasing the territory.
Yep, he got the Miao ethnic group under control, and Burma and Vietnam became part of the tribute system. He would travel to South China to check on the Grand Canal maintenance and water conservancy projects.
And he strengthened the examination system to encourage Confucian scholars to join imperial bureaucracy.
Not only that, he supported Confucianism, sponsored research projects, and patronized the arts. He was interested in science, astronomy, and cartography. His rule brought a ton of advancements to China.
I'm pretty sure he's also the emperor that caused religious issues in China. He continued the imperial patronage of Jesuits that began during the Ming Dynasty, right?
Yep.
The Pope felt that the emperor was interfering with Christian affairs and ordered Chinese Christians to give up ancestor worship. But then Kangxi was angered because he thought that the Pope was getting too involved in Chinese traditions and stuff, TBH he was. But
Everyone has their flaws. Sure, there was religious turmoil and all, but Kangxi's positive impact was huge.
Moving right along, let's talk about his grandson, the Qianlong Emperor. His rule, which began in 1736, was termed as the Golden Age. And rightly so. He had a fantastic impact on life in China.
He patronized scholarship, employed Han Chinese Confucian educated scholars, and helped legitimize Manchus as rulers, who were civilized gentlemen in Confucian tradition.
Yep, he enforced Sinicization, the adopting of Chinese culture to preserve the stability of the empire.
His expeditions enlarged the empire to 4 million square miles. Vietnam, Burma, and Nepal were in the tribute system.
oh, so the economy prospered because the area of cultivated land increased, right? Yeah. So the population must have more than doubled between 1749 and 1793. Wait. What about the peasant rebellions? Didn't the White Lotus rebels in 1796 didn't they protest taxes?
Yes, but by 1805, the rebellion dwindled.
But it would have inspired other rebellions.
Exactly.
I think we've gone over enough of the positive aspects of life in China. Let's go over some of the not so positive stuff. Oh, the Opium War!
Yeah, that drained China of silver and demoralized the population. And the Treaty of Nanjing was absolutely ridiculous. The Chinese had to pay indemnity to Britain, abolish the canton system, opened 5 treaty ports, and ceded Hong Kong.
It totally damaged China's prestige, and also encouraged like other unequal treaties.
The Taiping Rebellion was another event with a not so good ending.
Hong Xiuquan thought he was a younger brother of Jesus. Like, he thought that God had commanded him to like go out and like bring everyone to like the true religion. Like, none of like the Taiping like rebels like even survived. Like, they all died. So kind of awkward. Yeah, but it inspired the other Chinese communists. So like,
there was also the self-strengthening movement in the 1860s to 70s. Its aim was to preserve traditional culture while being influenced by the West.
oh, interesting. Wait, I thought we were doing negatives. That's good though.
Yep, they strengthened the military, built steamships, and set up telegraphs. A postal service, transportation, railways, and coal mines were established. Many people studied Western languages and books. Some even went abroad for military and technical training. However, China failed to turn into a modern power because it did not transform the imperial bureaucracy and traditional institutions.
China's limitations were pretty evident in this Sino-French War of 84 and 85. Even in the Sino-Japanese War, China suffered a lot. It had a huge payment of indemnity. It allowed Japanese industries at ports, and it ceded Taiwan, the Pescador Islands, and Liaodong Peninsula.
It created factions in the government between those who wanted to enact reforms to modernize and those who didn't, leading to the reform movement of 1898.
In 1900, there was also the Box Rebellion. By 1905, Sun Yat-sen had organized a revolutionary alliance. China was in such a mess.
For sure. By November of 1911, the Wu Chang uprising had begun. Sun's followers had infiltrated government troops and were staging uprisings. The beginning of revolution!
Wait, wasn't the first leader of the Kuomintang, or the nationalists, Sun Yat-sen? He fled to Japan and was assassinated by Wang Shikai. Well, like, Yuan died in like May 1916, so that caused like a bunch of revolts and like caused like the warlord period. So,
Okay, that's enough of colonial rule. I want to show you something.
where are we going?
To communist China. The Chinese Communist Party was formed in 1921. It was influenced by the October Revolution in Russia in 1917 and the Russian Civil War.
Don't forget about China's failure in the Paris Peace Conference in 1919 and the May 4th movement. That was intense.
Later on, the USSR began to encourage the KMT and the CCP to work together to overthrow the warlords of Beijing.
Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the KMT, turned on the communists and drove them out of Shanghai in April of 1927.
Stalin secretly like intended to use the KMT to like nurture the CCP to seize like power and like overthrow the KMT.
In 1928, Chiang captured Beijing and declared a one-party government, and while Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, he continued to pursue the communists.
When does Mao Zedong come in all of this?
Well, you see, he was China's greatest revolutionary leader who fought a guerrilla war against the KMT with his peasant army from 1929 to 1934.
Didn't he survive the Long March?
Wait, can you remind me what that was again?
100,000 of Mao's supporters were fleeing the KMT, but only 8,000 survived the 6,000-mile journey.
Wow.
Wait, so how did they gain their independence?
Well, it started out with a truce between the CCP and the KMT when Japan invaded Manchuria.
Yan'an became the headquarters for the CCP after the Long March.
The CCP and KMT formed the Second United Front. The CCP agreed to obey Sun's KMT ideology, cease all anti-MT activities, abolish Soviet-style government, and reorganize the Red Army to integrate into the National Army.
In reality, the CCP retained control of its areas, only changing government and military names. The CCP was actually using the Second Sino-Japanese War to grow. Mao wanted to expand its forces to 1 million men by the end of the war, right?
Yes. He compromised with the KMT, achieved parity, and infiltrated new areas and established new bases.
Yep, during this Yan'an period, workers and peasants were trained to support the CCP. Moderate land reform policies were passed, and improvements were made to the rural economy. Then, the Japanese lost to the Chinese in 1845, right?
Yep, and then a civil war broke out between the CCP and the KMT. In 1941, the United Front was broken down completely. Negotiations were never resolved. The civil war that followed initially favored the KMT. The tide turned by 1948.
So who won?
In 1949, the KMT was defeated. The People's Republic of China was established with the CCP as the ruling party. Here we are, the People's Republic of China, shortly after independence. In 1958, Mao launches the Great Leap Forward, a 5-year economic plan where farming was collectivized and labor-intensive industry was introduced.
This was an attempt to modernize China's economy, right? Mao planned to develop agriculture and industry.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that like China was reformed into a series of communes. Like each commune contained about like 5,000 families, and each family had to like give up possessions because everything was owned by the communes.
Yep, in 1959, the government began making impractical requests. The commune leaders were given tasks that were not achievable. If the leaders told the government that the tasks were not possible, they would be sent to prison.
Didn't the agricultural conditions worsen though?
Yep, in 1962, around 20 million people died of starvation or disease related to starvation.
It's pretty awkward that Mao himself admitted that the Great Leap Forward was a failure. But at least he came up with a new plan.
True. From 1966 to 1977, Mao forced a 10-year political and ideological campaign aimed at reviving revolutionary spirit. But in reality, the Cultural Revolution produced massive social, economic, and political upheaval.
Mao was trying to reassert his authority over the Chinese government. He called the nation's youth to purge the impure elements of Chinese society.
About 1.5 million people died. Like, millions suffered imprisonment and torture and humiliation. A lot of people lost faith in the Chinese government.
This was followed up with the Tiananmen Square protest in the spring of 1989. This was triggered by the death of Hu Yaobang, a former Communist Party General Secretary.
Are these the protests in which university students marched in Tiananmen Square to mourn his death?
You got it! Protesters called for freedom of press and speech, along with workers' control over industry. 1 million people gathered for these protests, and there was also a student-led hunger strike.
The government declared martial law on May 20th and mobilized 300,000 troops in Beijing.
Wait, don't forget the infamous Tankman. Wait, well, he wasn't that important, so it's okay. Never mind, whatever. You know, there have been a number of extremely influential people in the history of China during and since independence. We've already talked about Sun Yat-sen, Yuan Shikai, and Mao Zedong. You know, I think we should talk about Deng Xiaoping.
Oh, I've heard of him. He joined China's Communist Revolution, led by Mao, of course, as a political and military organizer. He was also an educational leader of the Revolutionary Army in 1937.
During the Cultural Revolution in the 60s, he was stripped of his post by Mao because of his emphasis on individual self-interest. Right? Yeah. He was exiled to the Jiangxi province.
But he made a political comeback after Mao's death in 1977. He instituted new economic policies opening China to international trade and investment. It eventually led to a peace treaty with Japan and improved relations with the USSR.
Wow. Because of Deng, China's economy grew and improved, and the standards of living increased. Wow. Wait, where's Alexis?
Did we leave her in post-independence China?
I guess we'll just have to keep calm and carry on.
Ha! Okay, so today, China is still a communist state, in case you've forgotten or have been living under a rock. The Chinese Communist Party is the main political party.
Oh, and its capital is Beijing. Isn't China split into like inner and outer China, and isn't that like divided by like the Great Wall?
Yes, 95% of China's population lives in inner China.
Since the late 1970s, China has moved from a closed, like, centrally planned system to a more, like, market-oriented one that, like, plays a major global role.
True. In 2010, China became the world's largest exporter.
Also, reforms began with the phasing out of collectivized agriculture. They expanded to include the gradual liberalization of prices, fiscal decentralization, the increased autonomy for state enterprises, the growth of private sectors, the development of stock markets and a modern banking system, and the opening to foreign trade and investment.
In recent years, China has renewed its support for state-owned enterprises in sectors considered important to economic security, explicitly looking to foster globally competitive industries.
Oh! I heard Uncle Ping saying that in like 2014, the People's Bank of China doubled the daily trading ban. How does the restructuring of the economy after the financial crisis in June of 2010 and resulting efficiency gains affect the economy?
The two have contributed to a more than tenfold increase in GDP since 1978.
Wow! It's great that measured on a purchasing power parity basis adjusts for price differences. China stood as the largest economy in the world in 2014, surpassing the US. Yay!
Woo! Don't forget that they want to reduce corruption and other economic crimes, and also contain environmental damage and social strife related to the economy's rapid changes.
Ding ding! Oh, I got a text from Alexis. Since she's been left behind and we haven't noticed, she's been thinking about how life is better and also worse back then than it is now. Here, I'll screenshot it and send it to you.
Oh, she said that other than China's economic dominance, a lot of aspects have improved. Like life expectancy has risen and many diseases have been eliminated.
Oh, wow.
Interesting, Alexis.
Also, international relations have expanded and improved. China was a closed country during imperial times, so this is a pretty significant change.
She also told us to not forget that China is one of the largest economies in the world, which provides more jobs for its urban workers.
But China is overpopulated. There's a one-child rule, and since male children are more valuable than female children, the rates of female infanticide and abandonment have risen. It's quite sad.
And China is not extremely open to other religions. The country has kept its widely practiced religions from before independence. Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism have remained China's main religions. Wow. Alexis has some great observations.
China is pretty amazing. Cool, wow, I learned so much. How do we get Alexis back?
See, the thing is, we can't.
Wait, what? Why not?
Time travel's a little complicated.
Wow, okay. So like right now, as of like 2015, she's like some old lady, like somewhere in the world maybe, like if she's still alive, and she's all like old and living somewhere.
Yep.
But then how did she like text us from the past?
That's irrelevant.
Should we like find her on Facebook or something?
I mean, I guess, but...
You know how long I have been waiting for you. Are you going to come to America? Where have you been?